The convener of today's program, Shobha Vijayendra Gupta, the chairperson of National Commission for Women, Lalita ji, the convener of this network of social responsibility organizations of India, Dr. Mallika Nadda, the co-convener, if I'm right, Santosh Chaudhary ji, Sanjay Chaturvedi ji, and of course, the responsibility of the corporates about whom we are talking, the CIA's representative and Director General who's here, Chandrajit Banerjee ji, and the august audience in front of me. I'm very happy to be associated with this initiative of the network. I think we are only talking at a right time about corporate social responsibility, especially when the Prime Minister of the country has already been speaking Ek Bharat, Shreshth Bharat, and also linking it with the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. There's ever so many reasons to talk about it now, with the investment climate in India changing, with greater interest to produce and manufacture in India, make in India. I think the corporate sector's role is only going to increase, and as a result, corporate sector's role, not just in manufacturing, but also to play a role of responsibility towards a society where there's ever so many things to do, is only an appropriate time. So I appreciate the organizers for having this program timed now and to invite such an audience to have a day-long debate, deliberations, which will only help in having a greater understanding and also a greater impact of the corporate social responsibility itself. So first, my appreciations for the organizers. And I also understand the deliberations are going to be on several key aspects of what constitute the corporate social responsibility. Even as I say this, I would definitely want to state that today we may have made a legislative mandatory framework for this corporate social responsibility, but India has had a tradition of public institutions taking social responsibility as a part of the agenda. Today, of course, under the Indian legal framework, we've given it a structure, we've given it a kind of a shape. We've also tried to bring in an element of accountability into it. But I will definitely take this opportunity to say that Indian public institutions have had a role in social responsibility. However understated it was in terms of publicizing that they're indeed doing it, but that has helped this country keep the difference between the rich and the poor narrowed down. So there has been a tradition, and I wouldn't want to attribute it to this new law which has come in today, saying yes, there's a corporate social responsibility, 2% is going to be spent on keeping up good and bad of society in a balanced way, we are going to help the poor. Yes, this is a legislative framework, but I really cannot hesitate to labor on this point that there has been a tradition in this country. And coming from a political party, I cannot but underline the fact that the founder of the BJP, Shri Deen Dayal Upadhyaya ji, the ideologue, had said so much about Antyodaya, so much about the upliftment of the poorest of the poor, of those who feel almost relegated to the backdrop of the society, to be given an opportunity, to be given every access to reach out, sponsored by so-and-so, but to really reach out. And in this particular network, I'm very glad to see most of whom I have earlier identified, associated, and understood as people who are working for the cause of Antyodaya, today being here, taking care of this corporate, or Indian social responsibility network. So these are people who I have recognized, been inspired by, who have earlier worked in the cause of Antyodaya, and I'm very glad to see them here. And I'm going to really put in a word saying, right people are leading this network, and I'm sure that is therefore going to be a very productive and focused group of activity. And I appreciate them for taking this lead from the front in talking about corporate social responsibility, when, to be fair to the corporates in India, it is just 1 year since this act has been passed. And it is only from April 1st, 2014 that this act has come into play. So for us to talk about it, it's the right time. But for us to think, oh my God, this act has been there, where is anything happening on corporate social responsibility? Is there an accountability? Are large companies? Because particularly sometimes during electoral season, you have a lot of parties and political activists raising questions, which are right, which are legitimate questions, and I don't say they should not, raising questions about, is the corporate sector really reaching out to sections which need help, because it is important that the rich and poor divide is bridged. And therefore, when questions are asked, and I repeat, legitimately asked, you tend to think, after all, there is an act. Has it really played out? After all, there is an act. Has it really given the desired results? And you tend to therefore forget the fact that it's not been very long since this act has come through. And we think it's not really, given us the desired results. To be fair, this act has only come into force, I repeat, only from April 2014. 1 full year is not really completed. But I'm sure there's a lot of traction already gained in terms of what companies will have to do towards corporate social responsibility. And it may help us to recall the companies which qualify to become spending on corporate social responsibility are those who have a profit of at least 5 crores or above, or 1,000 crore or above turnover, or at least a 500 crores of net worth. So these are very well defined. It is not as if we are speaking in a gray area. And even the heads on which the 2% can be spent in the name of corporate social responsibility are very well defined. I think there are about 11 heads on which companies are given an option to spend their money, so that in a sustainable fashion and in a very clear way, without ambiguity, they know where they can prioritize. And such companies which qualify will also have to have a board. Within the company's board, they'll have a committee, if I know the expression right. The committee, the Corporate Social Responsibility Committee, is the one which is going to sit, which will have at least 3 directors, one who's going to be an independent director, who's going to sit and prioritize based on the 11 items which have been given to them as to which is the area in which they would want to spend and what kind of money would go into it and how are they going to monitor and so on. So under the law, the structure of spending on corporate social responsibility is absolutely well drafted. But with that said, I would think today your agenda of discussion, including social audit, if I'm right. One of the things that you're talking about is social audit. Trying to look at how the companies are spending, I think, is a very, very important aspect. Of course, post 1 year of monitoring, after the law has come into play, the government or the Corporate Affairs Ministry can certainly go back to the companies to say, have you spent, what have you spent on, and so on. But it is only asking for an explanation. We are not going to ask them to say, if you have not spent it, give the money to me, we have to spend it. That's not going to happen. So let's be very clear. So I honestly see today's discussion, particularly the one which is going to aim at social audit, as one very key important player in seeing that the corporate social responsibility funds are being utilized with a certain level of transparency, utilized so that the social audits, whoever is going to do it in different parts, do get the right inputs so that there is a greater toing and froing or sharing of information as regards corporate social responsibility. The government can only go a certain distance, not further. It is therefore the responsibility of networks such as this to see to that the corporate sector is executing its, let us say, voluntary commitment towards corporate social responsibility. I'll also briefly refer to Mr. Banerjee talking about the volunteers grid and also the pro bono contribution that top executives of corporate sector can do towards ensuring that activities have a human component also. It's not as if the companies have given their 2%, it's forgotten. This angle where companies' top executives and a volunteer network force is maintained, I think is going to be a very, very critical component to executing corporate social responsibility. And if the discussions today can even have a sharing or a churning on what this whole idea is all about which, of course, the ministry has been very happy, as you've rightly referred to. It will be a very serious catalytic force in ensuring that the corporate social responsibility angle is well monitored, with a human dimension executed. So I think if the day's discussions at least briefly touch on this angle, because that's what is going to be a very catalytic force, as I said before, and that would also help us in understanding how we can further on corporate social responsibility. I wouldn't want to take much of your deliberation time, but I'm happy to have been associated with this group, particularly with their commitment for Antyodaya. And I invite a great sense of commitment from the corporate sector towards Prime Minister's call for Shreshth Bharat Abhiyan. You've got a list of 11 headings, but you don't need to confine yourselves to that. I'm sure you'll be generous enough to add to the Prime Minister's call for cleaning India, ensuring that sustainable hygiene and sanitary conditions prevail in rural India, in schools, in hospitals, and so on, in public utilities. So with greater participation from the corporate sector, I think the Prime Minister's call can be converted into a reality, and in that I seek all your cooperation. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to talk to you all. Thank you.